That was the song, remember, 1995, when the Springboks beat the All Blacks at Ellis Park in South Africa for the World Cup. Only time we faced them in the final.
I know.
We've got two of the greatest rugby players of all time. We've got a nice little intro for you two gentlemen.
It's Habana who's come onto the field to score on his debut. So out of nothing, South Africa strike.
Oh, beautiful kick. Oh, simply superb. He really is a star player, Daniel Carter.
Now he pins his ears back, and even Richie McCaw can only stop and watch the South African flyer score his second try.
Drop kick from Carter. Over she goes. Away goes the speedster. Still going. And what a try.
It's been a long time since we've seen something like that. Individual brilliance. Bryan Habana.
Carter goes for the drop goal. Dan Carter. What a kick. And he's done it again in the final.
To the hands of James, to Bryan Habana. And Habana is motoring. And once he gets going, no one catches him. The flying machine, Bryan Habana.
Carter, it is over.
Right for Habana. Gets past one, gets to another. This could be it. This is it. Habana has scored.
It's there. Carter has done it. Is that a kick to win the World Cup? Can they catch this man? Habana, he's done it again.
Bryan Habana is going to become the Rugby World Cup's top try scorer. Now Carter, he's clear. Dan Carter cutting them to ribbons.
And the turbocharged winger has left a trail of defenders.
How can a man have such poise, such mental toughness to score a spectacular try and then calmly slot a goal from the most difficult position?
Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Firstly, our homeboy, our legend, our icon, our Bryan Habana, all the way live from Paris. Good morning, B.
Good morning, KFM mornings. I'm actually, unfortunately, not live from Paris. I'm live from Barcelona. I've got to do a quick MasterCard event talk today. So got in yesterday, getting back to Paris this evening though, because it is a massive weekend, but always special talking to my KFM morning family.
Oh, thank you very much,
Thanks,
Bryan.
Bryan.
And for the first time ever, the legend, the greatest fly half to ever live. Oh, he is the one, the man, the great, the Dan Carter. Welcome, Dan Carter, to South Africa.
Cape Town.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, so many memories in your beautiful country. And thanks for inviting me onto the show.
Okay, well, Dan, listen, I want you to listen very closely because I don't know if Bryan has ever told you or you've kind of picked it up when you've played in South Africa that especially in Cape Town, you have a huge fan base, not just Dan Carter because you look good in a Speedo, but the All Blacks in general.
I think Dan seems like his bandwidth is unfortunately gone.
And I promise it's not sabotage.
Okay, we'll get Dan back.
We'll get Dan back.
Okay.
But I 100% fully understand that. I think obviously South Africa has a unique history, particularly through the apartheid times, and a big part of the people of color communities in Cape Town and across South Africa resonated with what the All Blacks stood for. I think as a South African, it was always weird trying to understand exactly why, and particularly the younger generation who didn't understand or weren't a part of apartheid. But hopefully the Springboks, particularly what we did in 2019, with the most transformative team that we've ever had, Darren, shows that we do have a country that we can be immensely proud of.
Yeah, of course. And you are now a global citizen. As much as you're a resident of Cape Town, Bryan, you I always see you in a different country. What are you doing all the time?
I'm trying to pick up as many air miles as possible, Darren. So I'm actually obviously back in Cape Town for the better part of the last 5 years since retiring. But I've been fortunate enough to do the likes of a MasterCard ambassadorial commitments, some ITV work in the UK, and being able to still be in elements of rugby, which I think is pretty cool, but pay me now back in South Africa is definitely my main job. So I've had to take unpaid leave for October because I have, I've been very committed over in Paris.
Okay, now Dan is back. So Dan, what I was saying is, Dan, did you know how many fans you have in Cape Town and the All Blacks in general?
Yeah, DC, maybe just turn your camera off. I mean, everyone's already told you around Cape Town how good looking you are. So I actually feel better if you. Yeah, we get how beautiful you are.
Okay, let's. You see, Dan is gone when he landed in Paris. He got that cheap SIM card there that buys him a few megabytes.
Oh my goodness, yes. Sorry for my dodgy Paris hotel Wi-Fi, but yes, no. Having played both Test matches and Super Rugby in Cape Town, you understand, how much support we have in that region. But whether that's still going to be happening this weekend and for a World Cup final, because it feels to me that South Africa is very united for this game, supporting the Boks. So what a huge game we've got this weekend. I can't wait.
Well, just have a listen to some of your fans here in Cape Town, Dan.
Oh my word, Dan Carter is my man. I've always had a crush on him. I even have a photo with him.
Mr. Daniel Carter, my son is named after you. We are proud Cape Townians. His name is Daniel Carter. Daniel.
Gorge. I mean, seriously, probably the best looking rugby player ever. Stunning to look at.
Specific fans there.
That's where it's at, Dan.
Oh my goodness.
No, there was nothing for you, Bryan. There was nothing for you.
Yeah, I'm saying, can I turn my camera off as well, please?
I'm glad I've got my camera off, to be honest. But thank you for all the Cape Town love. I miss you all. Seriously, I used to love coming there on a regular basis when I was playing in New Zealand. But yeah, so much love for Cape Town and the region, and well overdue a return visit.
And come for a holiday. And you know what, Dan? But you actually protected your nose throughout your career and your ears to some part, because I've seen some players in the after game life and they don't even fix the nose.
What was the secret?
Very. The secret is learning how to kick and pass the ball with huge amounts of accuracy and avoid contact at all costs, and basically just bribe the big forwards up front with normally something as simple as beer to make sure that they protect me, and they did a job of that for 13 years.
Now, Dan, we see we had Jake White on yesterday, and we always see the All Blacks perhaps as a psychological disadvantage, regardless of the form that they are in at the time of the game. It's the All Blacks, highly revered by us, the Springboks. How do the All Blacks perceive the Springboks?
The respect is mutual. There's just so much history that goes between these two teams. No matter what form you're going into a game with against the Boks, no matter what stage of the World Cup you're on, you know that you're in for a huge battle and you will get up for the game. So I know there's a lot of conversation at the moment around the All Blacks. They're building, picking at the right time. The performance of the South Africans, how much of a toll is these big performances that the Springboks have been putting in throughout this World Cup is going to take on them. I can assure you they'll be well rested. They'll be so built up for this game that I think it's going to be probably one of the best Rugby World Cup finals of all time. It's just, that's how much this game means to both these teams.
Now, Bryan, when you play the All Blacks, is there one part of the game or of the team over time that you've gone, okay, this is where they are weak, and you exploit that? Do they have a weak element to the game, the All Blacks?
No. So I think personally, getting to face the haka for your very first time is just so awe-inspiring. Obviously, as a South African, you understand the history around the All Black legacy, and everyone gets so fascinated about the haka, and getting to face that for the first time in meeting one of the best sporting teams that sport has ever seen, not just rugby. And trying to analyze them. I say quite a bit in a lot of the talk. The guys like Richie and Dan. You get into whether you're playing the Crusaders or All Blacks. You get in on a Monday. The analysts would be, okay, listen, this is how we're going to nullify these two guys. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. And the reason they are, two of the greatest All Blacks that have ever been, compared to two of the greatest rugby players, is the fact that you analyze them as much as possible, but their weaknesses, which are so limited, and their ability to game on game to produce the goods, was our greatest challenge. And to Dan's point, the mutual respect, I think, was amazing, but it was almost the going toe to toe for 80 minutes and then being able to share a beer in the sheds with each other afterwards. And the mutual respect then, went outside of the field, which was brilliant. So massive respect. To Dan's point, I think this weekend is going to be absolutely huge. Springboks probably going in as underdog, like 95, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, we're quite happy being the underdog. Now, Dan, just on the haka. So you guys, you practice, the game, we're preparing, we're doing rugby stuff, and then do they pull you into a hall and say, okay, guys, now we're practicing the haka? Or are you just born knowing it?
We do. A bit of both, to be honest. So it is almost like we're born knowing the haka. Haka is such a huge part of our DNA. Growing up in New Zealand, all our high school hakas, you go to different parts of New Zealand and, they'll have different hakas. So you're constantly performing multiple styles of haka. But most little boys in New Zealand are performing the haka every time they watch the All Blacks. So I remember as a 5-year-old boy watching the All Blacks performing the haka in front of the TV, doing it at the same time as they were doing it. And as soon as the game was finished, I would quickly run in front of the mirror and perform the haka to myself. But when you become an All Black, you need to fine-tune it, and you actually start to learn a lot more about the meaning of the haka, what the words mean, how to perform the actions properly, and making sure that you're all really in sync with your teammates. So there's a lot of haka practice within the All Black environment.
And did you guys see the All Blacks as the Springboks getting to the final, or did you perhaps think it was going to be France or Ireland?
I was All Blacks all the way, right from probably 2 or 3 years ago when they weren't performing that well. Like most New Zealanders, we were optimistic, but the form of the Irish and French leading into this tournament, they were hot favourites, and then the Boks were performing really well as well. You just look at that performance they put in against the All Blacks at Twickenham and also Wales as well. The week before that, they were in great form. So I knew we had to pull something out of the bag, but after learning a lot from that game at Twickenham and then also the loss in the opening game, that they've bounced back. And they've just been building away nicely. They've got a fully fit squad, which is a real achievement from the medical team at this stage of the World Cup, and they're just performing at the right time, and it's great to see.
I think so. For me, I sort of booked my tickets for the games with South Africa winning the group, so I actually had to sell my quarterfinal and semi-final tickets because I bought the wrong route. So I was fully optimistic that the Boks were going to be number one in the group, potentially play against New Zealand in a quarterfinal. So I got that horribly wrong, but it was because I was backing the Boks. To Dan's point, both Ireland and France have been the forerunners in World Rugby. And I think after both South Africa and New Zealand lost in the pool stage, you're wondering, is this really going to be a Northern Hemisphere dominated World Cup? But I think the fact of where both these teams are heading into the final, it just goes to show the depth. And just Dan hasn't mentioned, but what New Zealand have done really well is they've brought in a group of ex-players, so the likes of Dan Carter, Richie McCaw, Kevin Mialamu, Victor Vito. And these absolute legends of All Black rugby have sort of been filtering information, being a fly on the wall in team meetings, and you almost see that as being a valid point of why the All Blacks are where they are. So I am a little bit worried about Saturday, but confident in our experience from a Springbok perspective.
Well, Dan, so we've got this big debate in South Africa now. You would have seen what is going on. Being the greatest fly half to ever walk this earth, would you put Manie Libbok in or Handré Pollard?
Great question.
From a South African point, Dan, not in terms of how the All Blacks can win.
Yes, you are the South African coach. What would you
drop both
do?
of them.
You drop both.
Yeah, you don't need them. And just pull some schoolboy out of schoolboy rugby and play him in the biggest game of his life. You're honestly spoiled for choice. Libbok has been amazing for the Springboks all year. I've been really impressed with him and the way he's slotted in. Obviously, with Andre and his injury has meant that Libbok has really had to step up. And obviously, with the two slightly different styles of play, for me, having been lucky enough to play at 4 World Cups, I don't think you can go past World Cup experience. The fact that Pollard has been there in a World Cup semi-final loss to the All Blacks, and the learnings that he got from that game in 2015 was a big part of the reason that he was able to drive the team to success in 2019. And then you just saw his calmness, his control when he came onto the field. So a lot of it for me comes down to how you're wanting to play the game and potentially the conditions. And the conditions last weekend for the semi-final really suited Pollard. He came on and controlled the game. And I think that's going to work in his favour, and he'll be getting more game time. But as you know, with Rassi, he can sometimes have different ideas and what you think is going to happen. The complete opposite might. But there's something about Pollard and that World Cup experience, giving him as much time as possible in this game and controlling the game right from the get-go is something you got to take into consideration.
Bryan, your thoughts on that?
So I still feel, Manie was taken off very prematurely, and it worked out in the end. But it was almost the dominance of the English over our forwards that let us down. Manie kicked to the line 3 times. We had 3 line-out tries. We didn't convert any one of those, and he has been really sensational in that number 10 jersey over the last 2.5, 3 months. Literally given the responsibility, and the game against the All Blacks at Twickenham, really just showed Manie's class, both in his ability to get our fluidity in attack, as well as his kicking game off the tee and for touch. So I felt it was a bit harsh. It did pay off in the end, and maybe to have that experience of Faf and Handré coming off the bench, it's sort of a lot more comforting than potentially, having Faf and Handré start, Handré not going well, and then Rassi second guessing about whether Manie should come on. So I think the weather conditions might also potentially suit Handré Pollard's style of play. It's going to be a little bit wet Friday, Saturday, so it's going to be a little bit dewy underfoot, which might suit it. But I think Manie's done enough, to deserve that 10 jersey to start in a World Cup final. Handré, world class with a huge amount of experience, who's won a World Cup and is never going to let that Springbok jumper down. So sport for choice. But I think Manie for me is in the driving seat at the moment. Because
we hear that the conditions for Saturday, it's going to be a bit of rain. There's 70% chance of rain in Paris, and that's going to come in the afternoon. So it's more than likely going to overlap into the final. But so yesterday we were told that the Springboks were practicing in the rain, which is just genius from Rassi. And I was just saying that imagine Rassi, if there wasn't any rain in Paris today, he's going to be standing there with a hose pipe, hosing the players down, simulating the conditions of rain, getting them ready.
Probably. I'm not quite sure if ever. So we had a few coaches throughout my career who try to make sure that they replicate or simulate game type environments. And there was a few trainings that we had to do with the ball that was put in a soap bucket. So it was as slippery as possible. To try to simulate that. I'm not quite sure whether Rassi will be hosing the boys down at training today. But try getting game simulation in a final week. You're trying to really make sure that you fine tuning what you need to do. You're not going to get fitter. And these players have got to this point being as world class as they are. So you'd hope the fine tuning that goes on wouldn't require them, being super drenched, because it's actually also pretty cold in Paris. So we don't want them getting cold and flu heading into Saturday as well, because we know what happened with Susie apparently in '95, Darren.
Yes. So Dan, how do the ABs plan sort of for finals? How do they prepare?
Give us your secrets.
There are no secrets. At this stage of a tournament, it's more around the mindset. How you're going to be able to control your mind under extreme amounts of pressure, coming down to little moments. So they've got two psychologists that work with the team, their mental skills coaches, they'll be doing the majority of the work this week. The training's done, the work's done. Often these finals weeks are much lighter and more about recovery than anything. So yesterday would have been a clarity session. Today will be a recovery day, and then tomorrow will be the big training for the All Blacks, where they'll pick up the intensity, just probably for one training this week. So very light. It's all about being fresh, because if you're looking for motivation or things to try and inspire you this week, then it's too late. If you're not going to get up for the World Cup final, you'll get up for a match. So a lot of it's around just making sure that the team to focus on the process and don't burn too much energy thinking about the outcome and potential results of the game. So a lot of work with the mental skills coaches this week.
Dan, you're part of a special group of 21 people who've won the Rugby World Cup multiple times. There are 19 New Zealanders and 2 South Africans on that list. Some players after Saturday's final are going to be joining that group. How special is it to win the Rugby World Cup more than once?
It is special, to be honest. It's the pinnacle of rugby. It's what you play the game for, and to do it once is a dream come true. And then to go on and make history is really special. So I was lucky enough to be a part of that team in 2015 that won back-to-back World Cups, and that there was a whole lot of challenges to be able to achieve that, and such an amazing thing to tick off your career. And now the Springboks have got the chance of making history too, and being another team of winning back-to-back World Cups, but there's one player in the All Black side that could break all history and win a third Rugby World Cup, and Sam Whitelock, who was there in 2011, 15, and still here in 2023. So obviously a hugely legendary player, a man I respect so much. So he'll have even a little bit more motivation going into this game, knowing that this is his last game in the black jersey, where he's given over 150 test matches for the All Blacks. It's a really special occasion for him.
Wow. Dan, Bryan, we've got some questions coming from the listeners here, some quick-fire questions.
Mr. Carter, as a Springbok fan, I just want to know, when you played against the Springboks, who was the one player that you feared the most on the Springbok team?
I wouldn't say feared, because if you're fearing any opposition, you're not in a good mindset to perform against the Springboks. But I tell you what, their whole forward pack, brutal. It's like I had a target right on my chest, and they were just coming at me from the likes of Pierce Spies, Bucky's Bortha, Victor Matfield. Oh my goodness, it was always pretty brutal. But there was one player, Schalkberger, who just his long blonde hair just running at me, and he would just go and go and go right up until the final whistle, and then I could finally breathe again. So I had some great rivalries. Obviously, the number 7s like to get their hands on the little skinny little number 10s like myself. So it was always a lot of fun coming up. I love the challenge of coming up against those big South African boys.
Sure, and Skulk even went to a World Cup after breaking his back. Hey, that's what we made of here in South Africa, Dan. Got another question here for you.
From a Springbok supporter point of view, obviously the All Blacks have been playing pretty well leading up to this. Also the Boks grinding away. We kind of noticed they were a bit flat until the bomb squad came on. But how important is team selection for the Springboks to try and just negate that fast start from the All Blacks to try and play us out the game in the first 20 to 25 minutes?
I think we want your answer there, Dan.
Yeah. No, Selection is really important, but what the Rusty and the Springboks have shown is they have huge amount of trust and faith in their whole squad, and the fact that they've built up players to come off the bench and really add momentum to the team. You know, it is 80 minutes. I don't think we're going to see what happened in New Zealand earlier in the year, where the All Blacks got off to a really fast start, and then the Springboks clawed their way back into the game, but probably just a little bit too far behind initially. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be much closer. So I think the selection is going to be really important in terms of controlling the game initially, controlling the sort of nerves of such a big occasion. But then that last we saw it in a number of occasions in the quarterfinals and semi-finals last week, is that experience and in terms of the decision making in that last 10-15 minutes is going to be crucial. It's going to come down to the wire. It's going to come down to just a couple of little moments at the end of the game. So that selection, making sure you've got guys that are still on the field or on the bench that are going to thrive in those situations is really important.
Because you know what, Dan, the whole of Europe, England, all the European teams, they've all been moaning and whinging, whether it's ex-players, commentators, fans, about this bomb squad. All right? I have not seen any complaints coming out of New Zealand.
Oh, no, I love it. It's just thinking differently about the game, bringing the impact that it does. I love the way that the Springboks, they're just thinking about the game differently. You know, what ways can, they evolve the game and do things that we potentially haven't seen before. The All Blacks were not one to sort of complain too much and get on with it, and just control things that we can control, and that's exactly what we'll be focusing on this week and this weekend in particular.
Now, I know I need to let you two great gentlemen go, but Bryan, prediction for Saturday?
Best team is going to win.
Get off that fence, Bryan. Get off that fence.
I've got to be a neutral, seeing that I'm on the pundit minute. Darren, I think, from a South African perspective, I will be wearing my South African budgie smugglers, even though I have to have about 6 layers over it because it's that cold. I think the Springboks, are going to have to climb a massive mountain this weekend. The highs of overcoming the French in that quarterfinal, the 78-minute winner against England last week. So how they've recovered, prepared, post those incredible physical and mental highs is going to be really important. We're going to see the most experienced Springbok team ever, grace the field on Saturday with World Cup winners, global superstars, and you'd hope that they can go out there and create something historic. The first Springbok side to ever win back-to-back World Cups. Someone like Siya Kolisi, who's already one of the biggest to ever come out of the rugby, and what that means to South Africa. Rugby has just been such a pivotal, instrumental beacon of hope in our country that does have so many problems. I think the mutual respect will be there. I think the All Blacks do go into this game as favourites, and we're going to have to play the best game we've ever played to overcome this challenge. But that's what World Cup finals are made for. Moments of brilliance like we saw with Makazole Mapimpi and Chesum Colby in 2019. But it will be a game where they know they're going to have to be very, very up for it, because this All Black side is really peaking at the exact right time. So hoping for a Springbok win with everything that I got, but knowing that we are going to see a great game of rugby.
Dan Carter, your predictions, sir?
Underdogs. No. You're number one team.
We're definitely
number one team in the world for a reason. You guys know how to win, and that self-belief that the Springboks have built, through being in whatever position they're in. They have that self-belief, and they know that they can get themselves out of any situation, and is invaluable. The All Blacks are going to have to try and match that physicality that we know is coming from the box. They have to be really accurate at set piece time, both scrums, lineouts, and breakdown, in order for us to try and be able to play our game. And if there's one team in the world that can disrupt that, it's the Springboks. So they're a huge threat for us. But I like the way that the team have been building, but they're going to have to pull it in a pretty special performance this week if they're going to beat the Springboks and defending champions. But confident that they can do it, and I'm hoping for the All Blacks in a very, very tight encounter.
Oh, you see, I love that. I love hearing how the All Blacks fear us just as much as we fear them. Bryan, before we let you go, we had a lot of compliments for Dan Carter. So, look, people have come for compliments for you too.
Nee, wag vir die draadsitters. Ons eie krye Mr. Bryan Habana is net so sexy.
No disrespect, Mr. Dan Carter, but Bryan Habana has always been my number one. I am banana for Habana.
You still got it, Bryan.
You got it, brother. Thank you very much. Not quite the chiseled look, but I take that. Not quite the chiseled look of Dan Carter, but I'll take it. Team, absolutely brilliant talking to you. Let's, from South Africa, let's get behind the box. Let's hope for one epic Rugby World Cup final. And Desi, thank you very much for joining us, champion.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you, Dan. And I'll say this, and I think I say this on behalf of South Africa. You know what? If we're gonna lose the World Cup, I think the best, the easiest one to digest to stomach is losing to the All Blacks. We don't want to lose to anybody else. We don't want to lose in general. But you just seem like a good bunch of guys, the Kiwis.
Oh, it's very kind. You're not bad blokes yourself, the Springboks. So,
Thanks, Dan.
May the best team win.
Indeed.
Thank
See you on
Dan.
the field.
Thank you for your time, Dan. Thank you, Bryan. Oh, fantastic.
Cheers.
Cheers. Two of the all-time greats on at the same time here on KFM Mornings. Dan Carter from the ABs and Bryan Habana from, obviously, the Boks.
Very diplomatic responses from the both of them, eh?
Yeah.
Neither wanting to commit to a score.
Yeah.
We'll see you on Saturday.
KFM Mornings with Darren, Sherlin, Simpson, and you.